want to work together to broker a ceasefire with the federal government. Yeah, I said ceasefire. Plus, another first-hand dispatch from the downtown protests. And we finally learned what the state of Oregon wants to see before kids can go back to school, which is why we aren't exactly optimistic. Here's the story.
Hey. Hi guys, Dan Haggerty here. Welcome to The Story. Thank you for all the kind words this week. We've been getting a lot. I usually only talk about the criticisms, but the nice words feel pretty good. I'm continuing to cover all the protests that we're seeing, hence the makeshift studio that we're still working out of right now to kind of keep anybody from possibly being exposed to COVID in case I'm exposed to COVID while covering these protests. I please want you to keep the questions coming. All right, it was one of your emails that actually spurred my first story tonight. So keep emailing us at thestory@kgw.com. You can find me on Instagram as well or Facebook. And as always, use Twitter and the hashtag #HeyDan. So, our elected leaders have made some moves to end the violence we've seen between federal officers and protesters downtown. The AP says that a White House source told them that Governor Brown is negotiating with officials to send the feds home. And Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Joanne Hardesty have called for a ceasefire. So, two negotiations that brought everybody to the table except the protesters. But that poses an obvious question, doesn't it? Which Nancy asked. What exactly, in real actionable terms, not just slogans, justice or accountability, etc., does the late night group want to accomplish? And how does destruction and injuring police do that? So that's exactly what I wanted to find out, or at least try and get a sense of that, a common thread. Now, the first and most obvious answer comes from a woman from the Wall of Moms, just moments actually after getting hit with tear gas last night.
Don't follow the white lady around. Listen to black leaders. Don't follow the white lady around. It's not about me. It's about black lives. Don't follow me.
So that's what I did. Let's rewind to the beginning of the night. I wanted to hear from people of color. And as soon as we arrived, this man was on the mic with thousands of people listening.
So I got to ask another question. Who's got my back?
So he wanted to know who has his back, and his back was had by an overwhelmingly white crowd. Now, the man with the mic took out his phone next, and he started reading George Floyd's last words, and the crowd echoed.
Please! 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 I can't breathe!
I was actually in the back of the crowd for that, not up there with the camera. And I was back there right behind a woman who was getting visibly upset by that demonstration. She was black, and I learned later that she was from a biracial family with a black father and a white mother. I learned this because in the middle of that demonstration, she took off running to the front of the crowd and interrupted the man with the mic.
Please, sir.
Tense. And that moment right there silenced the crowd. Minutes later, though, that woman who ran through it to get there took the mic herself.
I have never, ever felt anything like the amount of discomfort I feel when I hear it continuously at protests or demonstrations screaming, I can't breathe, mumbling, I can't breathe. Why do we keep repeating that over and over again? There are other things we can talk about. We can talk about what it is exactly that we want, what it is that we're really here for, instead of having a traumatization of something so horrible.
Now, her criticism, as you could hear the applause start, was met with just as much applause as the speaker who she criticized. And when that man did get the mic back, he thanked her for her words. Now, I'm not criticizing that moment at all. I'm simply illustrating the varying interpretations of these moments. One that ended with that man with the mic yelling back into the crowd that anybody was there to try and burn down the building next door, that they weren't there for black people. He said, if you're not here for the right reasons, go home. And that reminded me of something that another protester had said a little earlier in the night.
Most of these people are the privileged. They're just coming down in the Costos, but really they got good jobs. They're just down here tearing up how they're tearing up, but I'm gonna need them to help us economically.
So by costumes, you heard him say that word there. Imagine that he was talking about the people in riot gear. So I wanted to talk to them too. I approached 3 people in all. They were in all black, they had gas masks, they had helmets, and I wanted to get their opinion on this, which they were reluctant to give.
1 second. Not with the camera, sorry.
What if we don't show your face? Let's show you from here down.
Can you not point at us?
So they didn't trust the media, and they didn't trust us for several reasons. For one, they thought that I would twist their words around or use them out of context. So here's a bit of our exchange unedited.
So what did you think about what the speaker just said about the tensions every night that turn violent at the courthouse undermining the message of Black Lives Matter?
I don't think it's my place to comment on that, sorry.
Why not?
I'm a white person here in the crowd, and I don't think it's my place to comment on how the message of Black Lives Matter is being addressed by that.
Are you down here observing, or do you get involved once the protests start over at the Justice Center? Or at the courthouse?
Sorry, I'm really not comfortable talking about this with the news crew right now.
Why is that?
Because I am, frankly, absolutely terrified of what the federal government is going to do with anybody with any participation or involvement in this at all. They're using people showing up with shields and helmets as pretense to say that they're violent rioters coming down here, when these are completely defensive things. Helmets, you've seen the mounting evidence of people with numerous head wounds, people getting shot in the head, targeted, attacked. They're using that to spin the message of what these violent, horrible people down here are doing. And I'm terrified what they're going to do with any evidence they have of people being down here at all, frankly. It's scary, and I'm here to support people. I'm here to support their message, and I know I'm taking that risk, but I have to mitigate it as much as I possibly can.
So that person does deserve a little bit of context. He's in his mid-20s, he's educated. He told me that he never considered himself an activist before. He said that he came down there the first night, in his words, he wanted to check it out, but he was so moved by police violence that it changed the way that he saw the world. But he's not part of some organized group. I mean, if you spend a few hours down there, you'll see that there are many factions and tactics, and that the tensions are not just reserved for law enforcement. So clearly that moment stood out a little bit. Fist fights and people bringing bats to them typically do, but so did the nice moments, people handing out water and masks and being kind to each other. There were a lot more of those moments than there were fist fights, but you might have noticed that was happening around a fire that was burning kind of in the background of that altercation. That's right where the elk statue stood, and it's a spot where I saw something that summed up what I thought were possibly the wants and the goals of the crowd and the complexity of this negotiation. I'm being told we don't have that video right now. There's some technical issues that we couldn't bring it to you right during the 6 o'clock hour, but I was there, I saw it with my own eyes, so I'll read it to you and I'll summarize. Over top of that fire, somebody was burning the American flag, a large one, while another person with a blowhorn spoke to the crowd and applause. And he said, "For the immigrants in concentration camps, set that flag on fire. For the people brutalized by police, set that expletive on fire. For the wars of empire, set that on fire. For destruction of the global environment, set that on fire. For the whole rape culture that this country is about against women, set that on fire." I worked really hard. I tried to find a common thread down there, something specific, not the general feeling or consensus that Black Lives Matter. And the only one that I really heard from everybody who you saw me engage with were the effects of tear gas. It's indiscriminate, black, white, rioter, protester, journalist. It burns the same. Now, this isn't a statement against the use of tear gas, only on its effects to bring those people together. Now, obviously, Portland's in the national spotlight right now, and if you need any more evidence of that, here is what happened in Congress this morning. Attorney General William Barr testified before the House Judiciary Committee, and Portland was a huge topic.
In the wake of George Floyd's death, violent rioters and anarchists have hijacked legitimate protests to wreak senseless havoc and destruction on innocent victims. The current situation in Portland is a telling example. What unfolds nightly around the courthouse cannot reasonably be called protest. It is, by any objective measure, an assault on the government of the United States.
Now, Democrats, they really pushed back on Barr's defense of the federal response there. They're accusing the Trump administration of sending in the feds to help the president's re-election campaign.
You used pepper spray and truncheons on American citizens. You did it here in Washington. You did it at Lafayette Square. You expanded to Portland. And now you are projecting fear and violence nationwide. in pursuit of obvious political objectives. Shame on you, Mr. Barr.
Can I just say, Mr.
Shame on you.
Portland, the courthouse is under attack. The federal resources are inside the perimeter around the courthouse, defending it from almost 2 months of daily attacks. We are on the defense. We're not out looking for trouble. And if the state and the city would provide the law enforcement services that other jurisdictions do, we would have no need to have additional marshals in the courthouse.
Now, we've kind of heard that before. That's something that we've heard before from Portland Police. In fact, earlier this month, Deputy Chief Chris Davis told lawmakers in Salem that they prefer to patrol federal buildings themselves, but they just don't have the manpower to do it.
A problem right now is that our resources are stretched so thin. If the federal authorities believe that they have a certain threat to their facilities, when they get to the point where they decide they're going to take action, I don't have the legal authority to prevent them from taking action. I would just like to make it unnecessary by having enough resources down there for us to just deal with everything outside the buildings by our standards.
And as we discuss their standards and their discussion when it comes to resources, PPB also says that the protests are slowing down their response times throughout the rest of the city. Okay. Wow, that was a big wind-up to the big story tonight. Now, look, if you are a parent of one of the 500,000 school-age kids in Oregon, you're probably going to want to stop whatever you're doing and listen up for just a moment, because for the first time since COVID-19 shut everything down, we actually know a little bit about what it's going to take for the state of Oregon to let kids go back to school in person. See, last month, Governor Brown said that she thought schools might be able to pull off at least a partial reopen, but let me deflate some of the suspense right now, because judging from what we've learned from the governor today, some of the Oregon's biggest counties probably will not be able to do that, because here's what those counties would have to do. They need to have 10 or fewer COVID-19 cases per 100 people and a positivity rate of less than 5% for 3 weeks straight. So let's do some math here. We're journalists, but bear with us. That means Multnomah County would need 81 cases a week or fewer. Last week, it had 453. Washington County would need 60. Last week, it was 290 there. Clackamas would need 42. Last week, they had 142. And Marion County would need 35. And last week, they had 280. So clearly, we have some work to do. But judging from the governor's tone, whatever that work is, it needs to be done, even if she needs to cajole us again.
I am absolutely unwilling to lose an entire school year for any of our kids. A year that could be foundational to the lifelong opportunities for thousands of Oregon students. I will push, I will cajole, and I will demand nothing but excellence from our districts and our educators.
Now, for kids in kindergarten through 3rd grade in rural school district, the rules are a bit more relaxed. It's 30 cases per 100,000 for 7 days instead of 10 for 3 weeks. What we know for sure is that Portland Public Schools will be online only through at least November 5th. Other counties have released their own plans. This is one of those stories, honestly, guys, has so many different specifics and details and exemptions and all that stuff that I really recommend you just head to kgw.com and read our story explaining everything, because this is critical information for families. Now, a lot of parents and teachers, they have different opinions about what the plan should be moving forward into the fall. Here's Christine Pitawanich with a couple of those perspectives.
We've talked to so many teachers, parents, and kids since schools closed back in March. And after Oregon Governor Kate Brown talked about new metrics and new plans for starting school this fall, well, parents and teachers had some thoughts of their own. Over a Zoom video chat, I spoke to parent Lisa Kensel and 5th grade teacher Julissa Rodriguez, who is also a part of Oregon's Safe Return to Campus, a group that wants to see 2 weeks with no COVID cases before returning to in-person school. I asked them a few questions to get their take on all this. What did you think of the new metrics and the governor's plan?
I appreciate that there are benchmarks set for each different community, and allowing different communities to progress at different rates and get kids back into their buildings. I am concerned that we're leaving this up to, we're leaving this in the hands and the responsibility for the public to maintain to decrease the spread of the virus in order to get kids back in the building. I know that, not every family in Oregon has a student in public schools, and so their motivation isn't as great as families that want their kids in the building.
So I'm glad that we're moving in the right direction, because we are keeping kids safer with the way that we're moving. But I still think it's still not good enough. So I think it should be based on where people live to see how the cases are going. And that's why we said 14 days, no new cases in our respective counties of where our district is at.
How do you think it'll impact kids?
Well, we know that the best place for kids is in the classroom. So, I believe that the distance learning, it is going to have to be rigorous and very comprehensive in order to meet even a percentage of the needs for most of the students that we have here in Oregon. I worry about, again, the kids that will be negatively impacted by distance learning. That's always a concern of mine. I worry about the challenge for working parents in the state.
They are losing a lot being distance education, because it's really, really hard to teach it, so it's really hard for the learner too, but education and learning can be made up.
What do you hope state and district leaders keep in mind as we head into fall?
I really hope that we can reach out to every student and every family and make sure that the needs of students are being met.
I just want everybody to keep in mind that how COVID affects everybody, but the marginalized communities, BIPOC communities have been affected by this a lot more.
Pediatricians we've spoken to and other health officials have supported the idea that kids physically go back to school safely. Meantime, districts are still hammering out final plans for fall and are expected to have them ready to go by mid-August. Christine Pitawanich, KGW News.
Commissioner Hardesty is used to being criticized by the police, but now the criticism is coming from inside City Hall. Plus, how Mayor Wheeler hopes a conversation can bring an end to the nightly chaos downtown. When the story continues.
I mean, it all started a couple months ago, and it's just taken off. I hope something good comes of it. I hope. I'm a little concerned that things could go either way. I don't like the way the federal government's been reacting, but I'm hopeful that there's enough people protesting that it'll have positive results.
Well, as a Native American, I just think it's important for Portland is a pretty white city, but I think, there's so many different facets to this city, and I just think diversity down here is important, and just to support the young people who are, they're making us proud.
I'm here for Black Lives Matter, and I don't agree with the federal troops being here, so I just feel like we need to stand up and make our voices heard.
We're going to have more voices from last night's protest throughout the show, as we try to every night. I was out there again last night to see everything firsthand. In the first part of the show, I talked a little bit about the different groups that I've seen down there and what they represent and why some of them are hesitant to talk to people like me. We're going to have a segment, that whole thing up right now on the KGW YouTube channel, if you'd like to watch it again, if you missed it, or if you'd like to share it. Now, speaking of people who don't seem to want to talk to us, Mayor Wheeler is teaming up with mayors across America to try and convince the feds to leave their cities. He and 5 other mayors in major cities signed a letter addressed to Republican and Democratic leaders in both the House and Senate. They're urging Congress to pass a law making it illegal for the federal government to send agents into their cities unless they're assigned there to work on existing cases. They listed 3 specific demands. The agencies must give notice and consult with local authorities, wear visible identification at all times unless undercover, and limit crowd control activities. Along with Wheeler, the other mayors who signed this were Lori Lightfoot of Chicago, Jenny Durkin of Seattle, Tim Keller of Albuquerque, Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C., and Quentin Lucas of Kansas City. But Mayor Durkin of Seattle may have already gotten her wish. In fact, this afternoon, she got word that Homeland Security's Border Patrol Tactical Unit, the one that came to the city last week, has demobilized and left Seattle. At least one report said they pulled out from both the pressure from the state and city leaders and the fact that protesters stayed away from federal buildings in Washington, something many protesters in Portland have not done. Remember, on paper, the reason the feds are here are to protect federal property. So Mayor Wheeler wants to talk, not to us, but he does want to talk to people here. He announced yesterday that he and Commissioner Joanne Hardesty want to meet with leaders at Homeland Security, including Acting Secretary Chad Wolf, and that they want to discuss a, quote, ceasefire and removal of heightened federal forces from Portland. We haven't heard if DHS is going to take them up on this offer yet. Of course, we will let you know. And while Joanne Hardesty is getting ready for this potential meeting with the feds, she's still dealing with a lot of blowback from some false statements that she made last week about the Portland Police Bureau. A quote of hers surfaced last week in Marie Claire magazine, accusing police officers of starting a fire in the Portland Police Union building, which is not true. Hardesty even admitted that it wasn't true and apologized for letting her emotions, she said, get the better of her. But the union, they are not letting her off the hook here. Today, Portland Police Association President Daryl Turner put out an intense statement saying Commissioner Hardesty cannot be trusted and said, I have called for an immediate investigation into Commissioner Hardesty's recent public statements. But our quote of the day didn't actually come until the second paragraph, when Turner said, as police officers, we are held to the highest level of integrity. If we fail to meet those standards, we lose our jobs. And while there are certainly examples of that not being exactly true, that is not what this story is about. It's about Commissioner Hardesty's relationship with Portland Police, which is already very rocky. She's been calling for reforms and oversights for 30 years, and she's going at it again and trying more tomorrow. Tomorrow, City Council is going to take a look at a proposed ordinance from Hardesty that would put a new police oversight agency on the November ballot. It would have greater access to public records. It would be able to speak directly to officers and would be able to investigate fatal incidents. In other words, it would have a whole lot more authority than the city's current system of oversight does right now. Unsurprisingly rather, the police union, they object to this and they put out several reasons why. They say the charter amendment would violate the law. It would create an oversight board that's outside of the city's budgetary rules and says it was carelessly drafted and didn't have enough input. And today, during a press conference, the Portland City Auditor echoed some of those same concerns.
Commissioner Hardesty has asked us to take her word for it based on her years of experience working on police issues. That's a bold request, given that she wants council to refer an unvetted, unrefined oversight model to the ballot as a charter amendment. It's breathtaking, actually, and not in a good way. This is not normal. Policy should not be based on invitation-only meetings that leave out other ideas than those of the convener. The public should get more than a few days to review the final document and more than a yes/no vote. Expertise should not be kept out of the discussion.
Again, the city will take up Hardesty's proposed ordinance tomorrow. We will keep an eye on how all that goes and, of course, let you know. Now, you've been sending us so many questions and comments, especially since my first kind of foray downtown last night, so keep them coming. I'm happy to talk about some of them a little later as you use that hashtag #HeyDan. Keep emailing us at thestory@kgw.com. We're going to finish things up next.
When we saw the federal troops come out, you know, it's one thing to stand up against the police, local police, but it's another thing for federal troops to come out. It's a slap in the face, right? Because you have your government, your federal government, telling you that you don't have the right of speech. We've already been pepper sprayed by Portland police. You know, my kids got pepper sprayed 3 years ago, and I know exactly what that feels like. And for them to continue to use that every single day, day in and day out on protesters, we understand that that's not okay, and it's a violation of our rights.
Change in America. Repercussions for the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. In the history that Black America has experienced. That's what it represents for us, right here. And we just out here protecting everybody's civil liberties. I'm a vet as well, so I'm gonna make sure they get here and post up safely.
All right, let's close things out with some comments right here. This one from Eric Richardson. Hey, Dan, not necessarily a criticism, but sometimes watching the story feels a little bubblegum, light and fun, not a lot of substance. Your show tonight was great. Your segment about many voices gives some important context to the protest. So usually what you do there is you start with a compliment, then you get to the criticism, then you end with the compliment. It opens me up feeling comfortable, then I'm okay with what you said about me being bubblegum, and then you close with a compliment again. Close, close. Next time, Eric, that's how you do it. This is from Dominique saying, hey, we're playing a Hey Dan drinking game. Every time you say Hey Dan, we drink. Go easy on us. I don't know why, you know, I say Hey Dan in order to promote people to talk to us on Twitter. So that's why I want you to say Hey Dan, not for a Hey Dan drinking game. That's why I say Hey Dan. I think that's 5. So hey, Doug wanted to know, he said, I sure missed the original story. I've gotten overwhelmed by politics all day. By the time the story comes on, I'm thoroughly saturated with political news of the day, so on and so forth. Doug, simple, very easy. Only watch us. And then this one comes from James. Hey Dan, watching you on the story the past several months, I thought you were mainly a talking head. Seeing your coverage of the protests downtown, I've changed my views, and I see you are more of a journalist. Nice coverage. James, thank you, but in defense of my head, it does talk. Thanks for being with the story tonight. We appreciate it as always. Keep reaching out to us. Let us know what you want to see covered and how you wanted to see it covered. Thanks as always. We'll see you tomorrow.